Hey everybody, happy Friday to you. This morning I'm reading in the book of John, which is one of my favorite books of the Bible. I love absolutely everything about this gospel and the message that it shares with us to simply believe. These things are written that you may believe, it says in the book of John. I want to share just a couple verses and some thoughts I have been hanging on to pretty tightly lately in the last few weeks. As things just continue to be crazy. In John chapter 6, there is a moment here where Jesus is teaching and he shares a difficult saying that they have a hard time wrapping their minds around or accepting. And really he's talking about his own crucifixion and himself being the bread of life. He's talking about his flesh and his blood. And it says in verse 60, many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, "This is a difficult statement. Who can listen to it?" Like, this is real difficult. And in just a few verses later, it says, as a result of this, many of his disciples withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. They were not walking with Jesus. Have you walked through a hard season that has just been really difficult and it has caused you to question the goodness of Jesus, or to question his care for you, or his reliability, his trustworthiness? Have you been at that place where you have wanted to walk away? Or even from his people, where you have seen his people not acting as they ought to, or saying things that they maybe not ought to as children of God. I love, though, Peter's response. Jesus asks of him in verse 67, says many of his disciples withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. So Jesus said to the 12, "You do not want to go away also, do you?" And Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." Peter recognized who Jesus really was and his true trustworthiness, his goodness, in spite of the difficult sayings that Jesus was saying, or things that they could not understand in the moment. Jesus recognized who he was, and he says, "Where are we going to go? Like, you are all that we have. You are everything, Jesus. How can we go anywhere else?" I've been reminded of that verse lately. I've also been thinking a lot about Ecclesiastes 5. It says in verse 2, "Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God, for God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few." I've been dwelling on the fact that there's so many things that in this difficult year have just been challenging to wrap our minds around as we're walking this journey of faith. I think it's very evident that God is at work and he is doing a brand new thing in our time, in our day, and that is exciting. I also have a desire to just figure things out. And I'm reminded in this verse to, I guess, not be so quick to think that I'm going to know what God is up to, right? Don't make assumptions about what God is doing now in this time, but let's instead take a posture of taking a step back and just watching to see what the Lord does, not being hasty or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. He is in heaven. He has this eternal sovereign hand and perspective, and we are on earth. We are just mortal man. So we'll let our words be few and just watch and wait and see what happens. I'm reminded too, this verse at the very end of John, which I absolutely love. As I said, it's written by the disciple John, who is called the beloved of God. Like, he knows deeply the love of the Lord and the safety that is in that relationship with God. And it says here, the very last verse, there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were written in detail, I suppose that even the world itself would not contain the books that would be written. We're given so much in the account of the Gospels and the Word itself of God and His works, His ways. And we're given such a beautiful picture of our amazing God that we follow. And yet we only know in part. What I want to encourage you with today is just to remember how really wonderful and beautiful Jesus is. Our Jesus who loves, as things are difficult, to take a step back, not assume that we know exactly what He's up to or how He's going to do it, because it may be difficult, but instead to turn our eyes upon Jesus, to look full in His wonderful face. And the things of earth, the craziness of 2020, will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. Have a great Friday.